Hi, this is Alex, and today I'll be talking about my development through my sequential narrative piece. When looking into fairy tales, I decided to go for a more unknown one, where I ended up discovering this old Japanese one about this old lawman and the dumpling. I decided to go for this one because it interested me, because it was a different culture and a chance for me to experiment with art designs I've never done before. I did edit the story a little bit to fit into my 12-page plan for this comic, as well as add a little bit that felt that it should have been in the story. But those changes I will state when we get to talking about each individual page. So, let's just get on with the pages then. Because this was based on an ancient Japanese story, I wanted it to have a Japanesey kind of feel to it, so I decided on having a select range of watercolours that will be made semi-transparent while put over a layer from a snippet of the original storybook. By using a select amount of watercolours, it added a feeling of continuity. When deciding upon the font for the piece, I did originally settle for a specific design, but I didn't like how it looked because it was too fancy, so I changed it. Later on, you can see in some of the early pages where this happened. I also made sure that every character had a different font, whether it was the narrative, the sounds, or any of the characters in general, so it added a feeling of individuality to each character. When designing the old lady, I wanted to go for a minimal design so I can easily draw her again and again. And to do this, I decided to have her have no hair, but have this kind of headdress. And with her only having two colours, this made her easy to draw over and over again without me struggling with such a constrained time limit. Another character I had to design was this jizo statue, which I researched into, which is just a statue of a protective deity that usually helps guide people onwards. For designing it, I looked at many pictures, so I got this little hat thing on and just made him look really cute, but also a bit weird and creepy at the same time. I did also forget to add a watercolour swatch for him, and so to fix this, I decided to just change the saturation of the blue and make it more grey. This is also where one of the changes in the story I did. She was supposed to walk into the Jizo statue like 3 times, but I decided to just do it once so I didn't have to repeat it so many times. So much so I had to adapt the story so that I could fit it onto these 12 pages. One way I did that was have her hide behind the trees instead of a statue. Another change that is coming up on this page is that the Oni was supposed to just sniff her out, but I wanted him to find her dumpling because it added more emphasis to the story. I did struggle a lot with the trees on this page as well because they looked a bit too much like a muffin and not so much like a thicket of trees. So I kind of edited it and changed it by looking into other comics and what they do to their trees to make them look more three-dimensional. The Oni, which is supposed to be based off like a demon in Japan mythology, more commonly known more in England as an ogre or a troll. So to design him, I decided to make him red, because that's what Onis canonically are in Japan's mythology. I also wanted to give him like a little loincloth 6-pack, and I decided on the hair being straight and white to add contrast to his rest of his body. I also tried to make in some scenes him look much taller than the old woman as he should be. When designing this comic, I didn't want the restraints of too many boxes, so usually the passage of time passes in kind of a chronological order on the page. This is very prevalent on this page as well as some other pages, and I did this so it made more sense flowing wise and felt more natural. I'm also not so great at drawing the faces, as I'm good at the mouth expressions, it's just I really didn't know what to do with the eyes or the eyebrows so much, so sometimes it can come off a bit blank, but I tried my best, and that's all I can do, really. Also, with his teeth, it was much harder to draw because trying to get the angles was a real pain in the butt. This is probably one of my favouriteest poses I did. It was also one of the first that I drew together of the Oni because it has this kind of powerful message that he's in control, which is fun. Yeah, when designing his hair, I did want it to be straight because I was kind of basing it off of Lucius Malfoy from Harry Potter because it gave a villainous vibe to him and that you should be wary of him from the beginning. What I wish I did with this comic was have more time to explore the Oni village, but because it was all kind of squished together, I didn't really have time to go into all the details of the village. I do design two more Oni, which you'll see later on, but right now it's a bit too early to talk about them and their design. For this one, I had to do the introduction of showing this magical item of a rice paddle, which I really wanted to cut out the story, but because of how important it was to the end of the story, I couldn't. So I just had to add it in as a one informational page about it. So I had it look more like an information leaflet, like I did earlier in this unit with a cup of tea brief, and just showed it how it can just duplicate rice every time it spins. I am somewhat happy with how this turned out. My only gripe I have is that there's no background colour because I couldn't find one that suited it without washing out the rest of the images. But if there was, I would have liked it to be a bit more than just the plain background that is on this page, which is just the book texture as I've mentioned before. When designing the other Oni, I wanted them to still look somewhat similar, wearing the same clothes, but I wanted them to look different. That's why I decided to have different hairstyles on them. One of them kind of has this 80s perm, and this other one has this kind of straight mohawk kind of thing. One of the Onis is blue instead of red, and the other one I wanted to have red but with a blue tattoo. He's probably one of my favourite ones, the one with the tattoo, which I decided to add a bit later on to distinguish the Onis between one another, a bit more than just hair. As you can see in this one, I am drawing them really big so I can add the colour in a lot easier before I shrink them down because they're not really that big in the actual comic book. I just wanted to have them in high detail when I drew them. But what I should have probably have done was drawn a campfire to go in between them so when they're at the shoreline, it doesn't look like they're just standing in the middle of nowhere and they actually have something to do. When drawing the box for the building on the left, I wanted it to look like inside of a room but also somewhat represent a house from the outside, so it kind of blends in with the world that is on this page. Because the first few pages of the comic were illustrated as full one-page spreads, I decided that I had to mush up the end together, which makes it feel a little choppy here and there, because it's kind of loads of parts of the story squished into one, which I was kind of hoping it wouldn't be too choppy, but it can be in areas. Or it could also be that the story itself kind of rushed its ending, as I did feel it did as well, because it was just suddenly like, oh, she escapes, she runs back home, and it just didn't really make me feel happy with the ending of the actual story. If I had more time, I would have loved to have changed it and made it more me while still trying to stick to the story's main plot. I really did have great fun drawing the Oni with all the different facial expressions, although it was a challenge, as I said earlier. It was fun to draw them in such expressive ways. I still have my favourite Oni, which is the one with the tattoo, as being drawn right there. And I'm just really rambling because there's really not much else to say. I mean, what I wish was that the blue Oni wasn't the same colour as the water, but I was restricted to colour wise. And there's a boat. I didn't mean for the Oni to look so sexualized, but that might just be the way that I draw it myself. I just felt like it was the right thing to do. And I realised some areas I did make mistakes early on, like in this one. I forgot to do quite a few of the wrinkles on the granny, as she's right there. I also tried different water textures until I tried to pick one that I liked. I did enjoy this project quite a lot, from its concepts of having to draw a fairy tale but in a new light. Although I didn't really draw this one in a new light, I got to explore one that I've never read or heard of before, which really enticed me. I know this was a bit confusing to some people when they saw it without text, where she was just blowing her face to make the Oni laugh and upchuck the water. And right now we're on the final page, where it has the old lady walking back to her house and opening a restaurant, because that's how it happened in the book, actually. I would have wanted a lot more kind of description of like how she escaped. It just says she ran home, which fair enough. I think that's what happened in Alice in Wonderland too, but I just wanted a bit more story to how she got back and escaped. Here I tried to draw a traditional Japanese house, but I was struggling a lot, so I used a mirror tool and then just slid it off the side so you can see the reflection of it being a bit. I then added colours from whatever colours I had left and hadn't used so much, and then just added the sign on top to show it was a restaurant. I then added, obviously, a table and a customer, which I don't really have much that I based him off of. I was just like, yeah, let's just use whatever colours I have. I was going to give him a full grey suit, but then he just looked weird, like he was wearing a one piece. And that's about it. I really liked the outcome of this comic throughout the whole entire story. It was a fun challenge and design to draw it, and I hope it came out great. I'm just wondering what I could move on and do next, which I'll be excited to like work on my own comic skills over the holidays if I have time. My life is a little busy, and I have a whole lot of book work to do for tomorrow. And just seeing that this is just looking great. I like it so much, and it's good. I really don't have anything else to say because I can't think of anything, and it is 2 a.m. in the morning. So I should just export this video and go to bed. So I guess this is where I say goodbye. And see you soon, I guess, or something like that. Yeah, bye.